It's the Kyle Hyman Show on Redeemer Radio.
This is Kyle Hyman, and last week I was in Atlanta for Steubenville, Atlanta, and hosting the event was the one and only Chris Padgett. We were supposed to be talking about NFP while we were down there. I took recording equipment and everything, but it never happened. So, rescheduled via phone. How you doing, Chris Padgett?
I love talking to you. I'm doing fantastic. You're in my life this morning. All is well.
Good. This week is National Natural Family Planning Week. So what are you doing to celebrate, Chris Padgett? You do like a cake, confetti, some champagne?
That's so funny. Do you know what? I do and have a great appreciation and affection for natural family planning, but we also have 9 kids.
Right.
So
doesn't necessarily make for the best spokesperson.
Correct. Which, honestly, I'm amazed that you're having me on this interview.
Do you get like some skepticism whenever you come in and say, hey, I'm here to talk about NFP?
Well, my wife and I, we do all the pre-Cana retreats for the diocese in Syracuse. And part of the retreat is natural family planning, a little talk on that. And we actually drop the 9 kids note during the NFP talk, partly because it is a little bit of a whirlwind. How can you talk about natural family planning with that many kids? But we weren't necessarily surprised by our kids. I mean, we made a choice to be open to life in that moment. So quite honestly, you know, choosing to have that many kids and being a supporter of natural family planning is kind of a neat little story. It's our unique take on it, to be honest.
What is your pitch for NFP?
Well, I love it. I love that the church cares about the reality that certain moments in our life, our family life, it might not be as advantageous to have a child right away. So the church isn't asking us to be like the Catholic Duggars and have as many children as humanly possible. But we're just invited to be open to the possibility of having a child, and that intimacy between a man and a wife is an incredible kind of collaborative moment where we get to be a little bit like our Creator in that the love can be so powerful and life-giving, right? And I think the words of Han, you can give it a name 9 months later. So ultimately, I think what I love about natural family planning is it invites the couple to have a conversation that maybe they wouldn't normally have. And there have been numerous times, because my life is living in an airplane traveling, when I would come home from a trip and we'd have to have the conversation, well, if we are going to have that sacramental moment, then we probably are going to have a baby. And so 9 times I clearly won that argument.
So, this all seems very practical and not even getting into the moral aspect of things. And it seems like there's kind of 2 different approaches to explaining NFP. One being explaining the morals and the ethics and the Catholic teaching on this versus really kind of the practical, whether it be environmental or like you're talking about the conversation that happens for couples using NFP. Do you think, like, strategically as a church, we should be using one or the other or a combination of the 2?
Definitely a combination. So when we do the pre-Cana talks, we are probably emphasizing more the idea that you want to, you know, make sure you don't eat gluten if you're gluten intolerant, and you're doing Fitbits and you're moderating, carbs. And then you're going to put into your body basically a toxin, a hormone that is going to stop your natural cycle. And so Linda does a lot with that. My wife, she'll share a lot about the idea of not only is it as effective in terms of holding off a pregnancy as the pill, it's safe and it's church approved. And but it's not necessarily easy. And I think that's one of the things that's the frustration for people. It's not like, oh, I just watched an app, I'm good to go. You know, for it to really be effective, you have to, watch that carefully. That's, the pattern of your cycle, notice and be attentive to charting. And then really you have a good tell. And we have a lot of friends who wouldn't have even been pregnant had it not been for natural family planning. And also, there are some really medical benefits to natural family planning, such as catching cancer early on. In fact, a lot of religious sisters are encouraged to use NFP because of the health benefits. So we do talk about the morality of it to a degree, but a lot of times the health and wellness part of it is such a huge appeal that kind of seems to be where we might lean. But ultimately, I think I emphasize the theological contribution, which is simply that we're called to be like God in the way that we love one another, and his love for us is life-giving. And so when we love within the context of marriage, it should have that life-giving component.
And I feel like a lot of times people, in efforts to promote NFP or natural family planning, they really make it seem like everything is positive and happy and great, and kind of gloss over some of those difficulties that you mentioned. And
no, it's horribly inconvenient.
Well, and that's what I think we should remember, is that sometimes doing the right thing isn't the easiest thing. And that just because something is difficult doesn't mean that it isn't worth it. And so what have been some of the difficulties with NFP, either in your own marriage or that you've heard with other people?
Well, the big thing for me, obviously, is because of my travel schedule, and I want to maybe come home and express that intimate love for one another. But, we have a lot of kids. And, in certain scenarios, Linda had, not too long ago had a baby or something. And if this means that she could get pregnant again, like, that thought would be overwhelming and quite honestly terrifying at times. So honestly, we had a lot of arguments over the years about about that. It would have been really easy sometimes just to contracept. But I love, though, the invitation to make a decision together on that is in step with and in stride with the church. The truth is, I think the Lord had given me an insight once that was really helpful for me on this whole process, which was, what if the eighth child that we had was going to be a huge, important saint for the church at a particular time? And each child is absolutely special and called to sanctity, no doubt about it. Some are recognized a little bit more over others in terms of saints and their contribution. And I wonder, if I'm withholding the possibility of a great saint, by contracepting. And honestly, we had given so much of our life to the Lord. Why not our fertility? So even though it was going to be difficult, the practices that we'd had, even in college, of just trying to give more of ourselves to the Lord, the natural next step was even our fertility and children. So from a very early part of our marriage, we were natural family planning before we even knew what natural family planning was.
We're talking with Chris Padgett about Natural Family Planning Week. And one of the things in the little blurb when setting this up was you had mentioned using NFP as a method of evangelization. And I wasn't really sure exactly how those connect.
I have no idea either. I think somebody else came up with a question like that for me, to be real honest. But the truth is, not to be completely insane, we are a testimony and a witness of God's love. The amount of children that we have, it's a declaration. Either these people are Mormon or they're Catholic. And so I honestly, it begs the question, why do you have so many kids? And it's an opportunity to share why we're open to life. And there have been some times that have been pretty cool where we've been in a restaurant with our family and somebody has paid our meal, which had to have been a substantial bill. But the comment usually is, I remember when we used to have, a ton of kids, or I grew up in a large family when I was a kid, thank you. And an anonymous, person paid my bill. So it's funny how, the most common question we would get when we would go to dinners was, are all of these kids yours? It's such a declaration of something different like this is a lifestyle that is different. And why is that? And so that is the evangelistic component, is that we really get the chance to speak about, just by sitting at a table, a restaurant, going out for ice cream, or, even in a movie, the amount of kids that we have, there's got to be a reason for that. And I love talking about our kids. A lot of times people say, oh my gosh, I have so much trouble with one. Have you ever heard somebody say something like that when you have multiple kids? And part of me wants to say, well, you probably are a horrible parent, but I would never say that. So I'm just joking too, because I usually just say, honestly, one can be overwhelming sometimes. And so be at peace, you're not alone. But we have a lot of kids. 3 of them are in jail, 2 are serial killers. So otherwise, everything's fine. Well, that's not true, by the way. Just be clear about that.
So when you're teaching people about NFP, what kind of methods or resources do you direct them to if they're sold by your presentation and say, okay, I'm going to do it. Now what do I do?
Yeah, that's a great question. First of all, there's a lot of apps that people can use that have some pretty helpful information. Another part of this is trying to find even a doctor that is open to, helping you along with, natural family planning and a pro-life stance. But ultimately, our diocese has done a lot to try to make this available for people going through the pre-Cana courses and anyone else who wants it. And so most dioceses have a right to life, really a support structure for parishioners if they want to get more information on natural family planning. Couple League and some of these other places out there that are independent from a diocese. They're programs specifically to help people learn natural family planning, and you can get information online with that, as well as videos and tapes and whatever modern technology people have. I mean, for us, when we do the pitch, we directly connect them to our diocese because we have an infrastructure for that purpose. But like I said, it's not usually just I'll watch a YouTube video and I'm good to go. This is a little bit more lengthy of a process just to make sure that the person is doing it right, charting right, and then they can start looking at basically doing some analysis, what happens with my body. It's interesting too, because the old days there was this thing called the rhythm method, and the joke my wife always tells is, what do you say about a person what do you call a person who's on the rhythm method? You call them parents, because the ineffectivity was so ineffective.
Right.
But today, with just the research and the work that's been done with natural family planning, it's so effective, and it's so in line with the church's teaching, and it's so much healthier than any type of hormonal contraceptive. So we're pretty big fans of it, but we recognize it's not as easy maybe as to just take a pill and now you're good to go. But the long-term negative effects of some of these contraceptions, and some of them are abortifacients.
Sure. And
so ultimately we're really just trying to open people's minds up to something they didn't even know was there.
Yeah. All right. Well, I want to direct people to, you have a course at Catholic Distance University. People can find that at cdu.edu. And also your website, catholicfam.org. And the videos that you're posting from the Happy Place Homestead, people need to check that out on YouTube if you do a search for Happy Place Homestead. Very entertaining and nutritious as well. So thank you so much, Chris Padgett. Appreciate it.
All right. Blessings. Thanks.